Hello, everybody. We're just having an informal discussion today with my friend Chris. We tend to not see eye to eye on some political ideas, so we're just going to kind of have an informal conversation. I'm hoping to utilize some argumentation skills. But as I was discussing with him, there's a scholar named Kenneth Burke who talks about the difference between semantics and poetics when we're talking in language, and that we're not always talking in a literal sense. Sometimes when we say something, it has what we would call like a metaphorical truth. If you go by, what's that biologist's name? I can't remember what his name is right now, but and so to just recognize, for me, there's an idea in Eastern religions called dialetheism, and it is the idea that we don't need to be afraid of contradictions. And so I'm not fully willing to say that there are no contradictions, but I do think that there are a lot of things that we think are contradictions that could be reconciled through communication, and to not be afraid of those contradictions. So as I was telling him, or we were talking about before, you can say that it is both true that we are not moving, like if you happen to be stationary at the moment, but then you can also say we are moving because we are on a planet that's rotating. And so both of those claims end up being true, despite the fact that they sound like contradictions. And so that is just the idea. And I think for me, it's been exploratory on that end, is to kind of search that out, is to see how much truth I can read into other people's claims rather than seeing how much I can take away from their claims or pull out of. So that's where I've been at, and that's where I hope to have conversations in the future when I'm getting into debates or arguments with people. So we can go from there. And this applies for me to terms like spiritualism or even God, I would say. And so we can talk about that later. But that is the idea. The idea is to not so much feel like you have to read into the bad of what someone's saying, but try to see the truth in it.
Yeah, I think it's good too, because we kind of talked on that too when around the election time. And I think if I'm getting exactly what you're saying, it was kind of like what I was alluding to with Trump supporters, and kind of understanding what someone's saying, even though there's another side that's taking it and saying, well, he said this. And then there's another side that's saying, yeah, I heard him say that, but this is what I think he means. I feel like this is what he means, but it's because of certain cultural understandings, or understanding tongue-in-cheek, or certain things that happen, even though there are some things that are just like completely indefensible, especially when we're talking about him. You know what I'm saying? But there's still some certain things that I think people are kind of like, okay, they're giving him the benefit of the doubt, whereas other people that are taking him specifically literally are like, this is inexcusable, for you to say something like this. But this might be a little bit I don't know how risky you get on.
Oh no, it's completely open format here.
Okay, I don't know if you have, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of Bill Burr.
Yeah.
But listen to some of his interviews when he's talking about people saying faggot, or saying something, and it's kind of like, I understand how you would take this culturally in your sphere, or what you understand in your paradigm of what that means.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, that's not exactly how I'm saying it. But somebody else, I could say that to somebody else who knows, who understands what's going on, and it have a totally different connotation, almost one of endearment to some groups that are different than what we would normally see. So if that's, I think that's what you're. I mean, it's definitely in
the vein. Yeah, it's definitely in the vein of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things that we tend to get into political debates about. But I mean, even that with Bill Burr, there's another, to me, a great stand-up bit by Louis C.K. I don't know if you've seen that one before, but he goes over the same spiel. But lots of comedians have it, and I tend to agree with that sentiment. I think one thing that I don't have a problem criticizing liberals about is that they don't spend enough time thinking about intent. You also have this idea of like outrage, where you get outraged for another group that you're not a part of. And that to me seems to be an even bigger dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's stuff that I understand. I guess for me, I always understand both sides, you know. And again, it's that whole like contradiction thing. Like I don't have to take a side. I understand both of them, you know. Like people have a problem with trigger warnings, and I'm like, I understand why you would have a problem with trigger warnings, but sometimes, like I was talking about it with Jay, where he was just like he didn't see the point in trigger. Well, he didn't say that exactly. That's not what he said, but it was something along those lines.
Well, that's what going back to intent. I think that's one of the driving forces or the undercurrents of the political divide that we're having that people really don't spend a lot of time talking about. Because I think even when we've talked about socialism or different things before, we've actually come to places where we're like, I think I actually agree and I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think the issue, especially from conservative perspective like myself,
yeah,
a more conservative perspective, is that the intent of what I'm saying is automatically attribute to the paradigm of somebody else that is actually they're ascribing an intent to me.
Yeah.
And so sooner or later it gets to the point where it's almost like a people get to a place where they're trying to now offend because they feel like no matter what they do anyway, you're going to ascribe a negative motive.
Right.
And it almost feels like a bully tactic to make me do something. Almost, I mean, I don't want to get too far off the topic. It's almost kind of like what Kevin Hart has been dealing with. I don't know if you know if you've heard about that, but basically they wanted him to apologize for saying gay stuff from 2009.
Oh yeah.
And he just said no. Like you're not going to keep bringing something out that I've already apologized about. And it's almost like now we're going to take our victimhood. We're going to take whatever we think we can use to bully you into positions to do whatever we want you to do.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is it has the inverse effect. It has an effect that says, screw you, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And not only that, I'm going to antagonize you in that place. Even though I don't condone it, I can understand where it's coming from and the perspective of from someone who's just saying like, before you even ask me, like we're not having a conversation about what I actually think about it, where we actually have common ground. It doesn't seem like it's serious when you ascribe intent to something they've said before they've even had a chance to express it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think that trivializes and makes a conversation very primal and very tribal, like very quickly. And I think that's one of the political issues that we have, specifically in America right now.
Yeah. To me though, so I mean, there's different ways to split kind of that hair. One is that some liberals don't. Some liberals don't want to have the conversation, and I know those liberals. They just don't see the point, as well. That some do. But to me, the big thing that I think I don't understand from the conservative side is this kind of, well, like the term snowflake, right? It's made for liberals, but I'm around conservatives all the time who also get upset by things that are said. So it's like, aren't you just you want them to interpret your actions favorably? Do you interpret their actions favorably? Because it's not like I see conservatives doing it either, right? So it is a both side issue. It is where both sides aren't interpreting.
Well, I'm only speaking from my perspective,
right?
Like I don't necessarily see that much, especially from the conservatives that I run with. It's not, and most of the conservatives that are leading, so to speak, the conservative type of movement, if you want to say that. Those are the ones that have come up with Snowflake and things like that. I don't necessarily know that the everyday person that has a small government mindset, believes in a socialistic aspect of the government, and that is supposed to be something that picks people up, helps them get back onto their feet, and then lets them live however they want to live, and a legitimate role that protects of the government that protects everybody else's freedoms, protects me from taking from you and you taking from me, right? And but I don't necessarily see a lot of those people that I walk day to day just saying that, unless it's something that's repeating something that somebody else is doing. But I do understand that there are people, I think, on both sides that are going to be the counter. I I don't think that most liberals are that way, but I do see that. I think the extremes of both sides are pushed to the forefront as the poster boys for the whole. I think that's a problem too. But I don't necessarily think that, like, for instance, liberals like you, I can sit and have a conversation with, and most of the time we can get to a place where we at least are able to rationalize each other's positions and understand exactly where somebody's coming from. Right. That's refreshing. It's refreshing to be like, okay, why do you think this way? What were the building blocks that got you to this conclusion? Because I don't think we do that enough in our society, and I think that's why we keep going around and around and around, and then it just becomes an intent that is attributed to somebody.
Right. Yeah. Two things off of that. Like, one is, it's the same thing for me. A lot of liberals that I spend my time around are ones at the university, and they're not the ones that are, if you want to call it extreme, going around punching Nazis, even though we can have a conversation about that. It's just like, is that necessary, or is that antagonistic? What is that? But they're just not who you think of when you think of extreme, whatever. But but then you have, like, so for instance, like, you'll hear Steven Crowder, right? And he talks so much about snowflakes and how they can't take a joke or this or that. But I've seen him in interviews with people where they make a jab at him, or there was one guy who was explaining socialism to him, and he made then he made the illusion that he was, like, autistic, and he just flew off the handle. And
I think that's a slight mischaracterization.
Well,
he didn't fly off.
No, he didn't fly off the handle, but he
did get upset. He came back at him.
No. I mean, he threatened to censor him. Quote unquote censor. I won't consider that censor.
It's been a while. I do know that he got angry. It was visible. It was something that he did.
And he told him that if he did it again, that he would be done.
I think there was a place where he kept doing stuff after the fact that I don't think was beneficial for the conversation.
Okay.
And so I don't necessarily think it was because simply because of his feelings were being hurt. I think the snowflake thing is coming from people that are like, you cannot say anything that, like, you disagreeing with me. It's violence towards me. You disagreeing with, even taking the Ben Shapiro. I know that's your favorite guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, or like the Zoe Turd thing when he was on the doctor's show. I don't know which show it was.
I don't know.
But basically the big guy that's the transgender guy or whatever, and he's like, you say that one more time, you're gonna be leaving in. Like,
I saw that.
Okay, you know what I'm saying? It's like one of those things is like, okay, he's like, I'm saying something that I think is a fact. Right? And and you can attribute to whatever you want, but he stated it as a fact. He said this is the what I agree or I believe is actually scientific fact. There is no refutation of it. It's more of, how could you say this? And it's like, when did we jump from actually even having the argument to you just saying, I have to agree with everything that you say, or I'm a bigot and this and that. I think that's where I don't think it just started. I feel like this is maybe my perception of the political arena right now. And it's very limited. It's just mine, right? But I feel like people think that conservatives have felt that way when Trump came on the scene. That people were upset about if you don't agree with Barack Obama, you're a racist. Or the hidden motive behind everything that you do in disagreement to this person is racism. Or you are an Uncle Tom, or you're this or that. And people, I think, to a point, allowed it to generate to the place of, I don't give a crap what you say. I'm gonna put on my MAGA hat and I'll do it right in your face. I don't care anymore.
But that to me seems like you're saying on the one hand that you don't care, but then you are responding as if you do care. You're not acting as if you.
I never said they didn't care.
No, but it seems to be like it seems to be like I wouldn't do this normally, but now I'm going to do it because of you.
Right. Yeah. Like, that's why I said degenerating. It's not a good thing.
Okay.
I think
All right.
I think everybody's responsible for themselves.
Okay.
And I think if you're allowing anybody to provoke you into a place of doing what they're doing, you're no better than what they are.
Right.
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 And so there has to be some type of level, which is a challenge, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like your little brother keeps punching you and punching you and punching you.
Right.
You're the older brother, and you're supposed to not be as stupid. And sooner or later, you whack him in the face, and you say, "I don't care," and you realize how stupid you look.
Right.
Fighting you know what I'm saying, a younger person.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying that it's correct or the right way that we should handle
but
things.
It's how it happens.
But it's like Jordan Peterson's been saying. He was like, one of the things that he's been struggling with the most is anger with people who are mischaracterizing and I would listen to.
And it's everybody too. It's Sam Harris. We can talk about that too, because I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we're too wrapped up in we don't want to talk about identities. Like, isn't that also just giving too much attachment to your own ideas? People are going to misconstrue what you say. There's too many people. There's billions. There's billions of people.
I get that.
Some people are going to do it.
I think there's a sense when you understand that people are doing this deliberately. That becomes when you are somebody that is like him sitting down with Sam Harris. It was a peaceful exchange. Why? Because they had a mutual.
They had good faith, is what.
Good faith, and they both wanted to actually flesh out certain things and be true to the argument, true to the facts.
Yeah.
You know, like within reason. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's got their own deal, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's sometimes where it's just like hit jobs that you want to come in and you want to frame certain things in a way that's going to make someone look like they're doing something that they're not doing.
Right, like Jordan Peterson had an interview with, I don't know who the reporter was, but it was a female reporter, and it was clearly that.
Right.
And sure, people come in with that. They come in with the intent that they're going to make you look stupid, even if your position is right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't care what your argument is. They don't care to have the argument. And so certainly that happens, and certainly that happens on the left. I just also feel like it clearly happens on the right as well. You know, where I see the same thing going, where there's still an initiation that's bad faith. But to me, though, again, this is people wrapping themselves too much up into their own personal identity or feelings, but then also the identity of their group too. Isn't that that seems to me rife for bias? You're going to attach yourself to this group so that if somebody attacks the Republican or the Democratic Party, you have this I need to fight for my cause. And it's just it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
You know, either the person is making a good argument and you need to acknowledge it, or they're not.
Yeah.
And so I think we can agree that has happened, or that's been happening.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it's a huge issue. It didn't just start this century, by the way. This has been going on for forever. You know, this has kind of been the tactic of a two-party system. You know, you have to have an enemy, so to speak. Yeah. But okay, yeah. So I think we agree with all that. You were talking about, the guy getting violent. To me, though, again, that's analogous to, and again, this is not to defend that person, the transgendered. I would say female, but the transgendered female who was on the show with Ben Shapiro. Yeah. Okay. So the audio keeps cutting out for some reason, but anyway, we're to just kind of speed this up just a little bit. We were talking about how both sides seem to have a bit of snowflake. That's what Chris here just said. Let me get rid of. Okay. And just how there's vitriol on both sides when it comes to certain things, and talking about why that happens and when that happens. And what was the big thing that we were talking about? Conservatives. What were we saying?
We were talking about the hold on. We were talking about the fact that motive is ascribed
right.
to,
okay, that's it. Yeah.
And how there's
it's a reactionary to that. You have those ascribed to you, so you just kind of go with it.
It's I think both sides sees it as, I think it's generational Also, I think that's a factor that we don't take, because whenever I start to study politics and things like that, back into years before I was even born, I see them like this is the exact same thing that's going on today. It's just packaged differently.
Yeah.
And I think in every generation, we think something is new happening.
Yeah.
Or there's something that's sweeping, or a thought process that's kind of just sweeping the minds of people, or something that has never been, pioneered, but it has.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, history, of course, is a good teacher in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I think the ascribing of motive to certain parties, whenever somebody does that, irrationally, I think what happens is it starts a process in the culture of a rebuttal. It's something that's going to come back. And whenever there's someone that's not having the conversation, regardless of whether it's conservative or liberal, or whatever, independent, whatever you want to call yourself.
Yeah.
If there's somebody that's ascribing motive without any reason, sooner or later that whole type of argument is going to degenerate to something that cannot produce any type of forward progress in the culture. I think that way. And just from what I've seen so far and what I've seen throughout history is, if you're ascribing motive to someone without actually having the common courtesy to sit down and actually talk to them, and understand their position, and not automatically say that it's coming from some type of evil place, which it's easy to do because we keep pushing all the extremes to the forefront.
Yeah.
We push the extremes. We push the colleges, the crazy people that are running around, which may be paid people. We never know what's going on behind the scenes. And then the person that has a 3-hour debate or conversation, the people that have 3 hour from two different opposing sides, they never get pushed to the forefront. Like, people aren't lining up to see that. At least that's not pushed to the forefront. That there's some people are lining up to see Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris have a conversation.
Right.
And so what we get is a bunch of shallow people, for the majority, that have shallow arguments about what they believe. Trump's a racist. Or Barack Obama hates whatever. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever plan that you're in. But whenever you ascribe that motive to someone, and it automatically puts this wall up, ironically. You know what I'm saying? And you cannot have any type of forward progress in any type of, progressives, like there's no progress that's going to take place in that.
Right.
Because now it's gone to this, like, rudimentary, I don't like you because you believe this, and you don't like me because I believe this, and let's just not have any conversation at all.
Right.
Or if we do, we're just going to sling mud at each other.
Yeah, so there's two things I'd like to say off of that. One is to kind of give the argument of liberals who say that certain things, even though they seem benign from conservatives, aren't. And I'm not saying that's my argument. I'm going to give their argument. And then the other thing is going to be to talk about, I guess, my own perspective. So one is, we were talking about the transgender thing, right? And we were talking about that, the person who became violent towards Ben Shapiro. And I think a lot of people would argue, and it can help to look at this historically, that certain attitudes or words even, or behaviors, spark violence towards people, or they promote violence towards a certain group. And I'm not going to say that that's 100% true or false. It seems to ring true on some level to me, though. And I'm not interested in the small details, right? But hopefully you would agree that maybe that is also possible.
I think it is. It's possible.
Okay. Right.
I'm
but
not
it's
gonna
not
rule it out.
Right. Okay. All right. And then, so the other thing for me is just my own perspective, which is, I agree with you. I agree that, and I've seen this all the time, where it's just like, for me, and again, this is my position, Trump is already bad enough for me. And so I don't need to read into intents. I don't have to wonder, when he's saying this thing, does he really mean this thing? Because I can just go off of what I know he's saying and what he says he means. And that would be enough for me. And the same goes for a lot of things. And misconstrual happens, and you're right. And there needs to be some way to like break down these figures. But for instance, I'm sure you hear about students on campuses or stuff, and we can talk about what percentage that is, because it's really not a lot. All those things that seem to happen on campuses, that conservatives seem to have a problem with. But I will go to, and I do it often, like a Fox News, like a Facebook page, and then I look at the comments, and they do seem very hateful to me. I mean, they just seem like it, and it's not me reading intent. It is them saying, like, they don't at all seem to be regarding the well-being of other people. They seem innately concerned with themselves and their family and their well-being or their community, as opposed to people that are different.
Well, yeah, I think there's a couple parts to that.
Okay.
Now, I can only speak in one of those parts from my perspective, because I don't know what other conservatives have seen, what they experience. But yeah. I think I understand what the process is, because I've known the frustration myself.
Yeah.
When you do not have animus towards a certain person, and you generally do not give a crap what they do with their lives, but you do not agree with what they're practicing, but you just keep it pushing, it feels like in some cases those things are pushed on you, that you have to address them and you have to agree with what somebody else is, or you are X, right? And I think I think what's happening is, I think people are becoming more ravenous and careless about what they say and how they say it, because I know specifically I found it in my own self that I had to check myself. I start getting to a place where I'm automatically frustrated. I'm automatic upset, and I wasn't before when we first started having these conversations, but when these things started to come, I'm like, okay, well, what's this about? And then that being ascribed to you after a while gets frustrating. Yeah. Because like we've talked about it before, like homophobe. When I start breaking down, I'm like, I'm not afraid of homosexuals. I know homosexuals. Yeah. And they wouldn't, if they were to talk to you right now, they were like, Chris never treated me differently. He never did anything to me. Does not agree with their lifestyle. But he, like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? What you're doing is what you're doing. Yeah. Like, go ahead and do what you got to do. But that to automatically, I think the broad stroke, the broad brush painting everybody that is going to do it, comes to a place where you if you listen to it enough from either side, I think you start to become embittered towards people. I'm not saying that every single hateful thing that you see on a conservative website is not coming from some moron, some toothless moron in the backwoods somewhere saying some stupid stuff. You know what I'm saying? Which is possible. It could be a good number of people. I'm not going to say most, because I don't think that is most. But I think vice versa. I think there are reactions. It's kind of like we were talking about. Like, it's like your mom turning around after you punched your little brother. It's kind of like, who started this? And one day it could be this person, one day it could be the other. And I think the characterization of both of those things from our vantage point is limited, and our ability to say, because I think about it sometimes, I'm like, well, who started it? Because I came into following politics around Barack Obama. That's 2008, right? I wasn't even really paying attention until about 2012, and I start to see, researching certain things that he was doing behind the scenes that I didn't agree with, and stances that I didn't hold, and things that I thought were unconstitutional that he did. Those are the grounds that I didn't like him as a candidate. But I would often say, I think he's doing a great job as a father. I think he's doing a great job as a representative of the black community. I think he's doing all of these things, the images, I think he's he does a lot of good things. But that's never explored, because the conversation stopped with, you don't like him because of this, or you're brainwashed, or you're this, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And it's just like, that's so ignorant that I have to spend my time trying to work through this that sooner or later you almost go to this like tribal set thing.
Yeah,
I've had to check it in my own self where there's certain things I'm like, I heard this before and I'm ready to fight. You know what I'm saying? Because I've heard it so many times that I'm like done with this stupidity. But whereas we're having a conversation here and it's just like, okay, well, why do you think this? It's almost refreshing, like, because now we can have a conversation. Okay, that's what you think about it. I don't agree with what you say, but I respect you enough to not attribute some type of motive that I just dreamt up that seems somewhat childish, and vice versa. I think that's what a lot of people see. From my perspective, I think that's what people see when they get on conservative sites, and it's just like, these seem like a bunch of, you know, racists that don't this and that, whatever. I think people have gotten to the point where they do not care if you call them a racist anymore, because they were called racist when there was nothing to warrant it. They had certain things. I know specifically from people that I know that they were called racist when when they weren't ascribing to those ideas. Now they just don't care. Like, it doesn't mean anything to them anymore. Call me whatever you want. I'm going to say whatever I want to say to you. And if it comes off the wrong way, they feel justified in the fact that you took the civility out of the conversation when you ascribed a motive to me that I didn't have.
Yeah. 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 And so.
Sorry, that was a lie. Very long-winded.
Oh, no, that was great. That was great. There's a couple things that I want to say about that. One is that. So the thing with a lot of liberals is, so again, I can see both sides here. It's like there's a certain amount where I've heard liberals do it, so I know they do it. I know a person says X and they attribute things to that person, and I actually know what they're saying because I've listened to their argument before. I'm like, that's not at all even what they're saying, and you just went there. And so, even though, again, I'm glad that we're still having the conversation about, you know, you shouldn't care what people think. You should act in accordance with the way that you act, regardless of what people think, right? You shouldn't be worried about what people think of you or what labels they put on you. Right is right and wrong is wrong, regardless of what else is going on. So the other thing is, liberals are afraid of and are also right about kind of subversive attitudes or subversive behavior that you can always say that's not really racist, but there's been so many things said by people saying that's not really racist when it was actually racist, that they're like, there's just racists hidden everywhere. And to me, that is on some level evidenced by the fact that you clearly have people who are openly racist now, regardless of maybe, I feel like calling them racist didn't make them actually racist. I really feel like they were just racist and they didn't feel as comfortable saying it. Whereas now in this climate, they do feel more comfortable saying it. Yeah. And so again, to me, there was that still huge baseline of racism that puts people on edge when they're hearing things like, when they're hearing something that it's just like, that's questionable. No, you didn't say I hate black people. Yeah. But the things that you're what's the word I'm looking for here? The things that you are proposing or that you are supporting will hurt the black community way more than it will hurt the white community. And at that point, that seems racist, right? And maybe you don't even know that. So like maybe...
Well, I think that's actually the case a lot of times with people that I know. Okay. I think it's like, because there's times I've had to educate.
That they didn't know that?
They had no clue. Right. The people were, it's like, okay, that's a dog whistle. And these people were like, I was born in 86. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what dog whistle you're talking about from the 60s that meant that. Yeah. See what I'm saying? And for you to ascribe that to me just means like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what? We grew up watching the Care Bears. We don't, you know what I'm saying? We're not thinking about this from this particular perspective. And I think sometimes it's attributed to the things that people have been ingesting mentally. They've been taking in these type of ideas. Yeah. And so I've been listening to my professors and they've been talking about this. Or I've been listening to my church leaders and they've been talking about this. And so I see it from these two different paradigms. And I'm trying to talk to this person without first understanding where they're coming from. I've had to talk to people and I'm saying, okay, I understand why you would have some some type of trepidation towards Black Lives Matter. You see what I'm saying? I understand why you'd be like, why are they rioting and doing all this stuff? Well, let me help you understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you look at Fred, what's his name? Black Panther leader. Like, went in and shot up the house. I can't remember his last name, but he was one of the Black Panther leaders. And this is what, like, before Black Panthers was like, you know, trying to like look the face that they were giving Black Panthers.
Right.
We're going to take care of our business, and we have a justified reason. It's like the Revolutionary War happens, people stand up and say, "Give me liberty, death." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're gonna fight. We're gonna kill. We're gonna do whatever we have to do to survive.
Right.
And then on this other side, when you've been depriving people of death and liberty, they fight up. We got to squash this rebellion, because what we're doing is not right. You see what I'm saying? We're doing the same thing that our forefathers fought against. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you find out that these people were shot and killed unjustly. The police just ran in and shot them up. I can't remember that guy's name. But I had to tell him about that. I'm like, okay, so it's not illogical for Black people to automatically jump to the worst when it's a police shooting. It's not illogical. As a matter of fact, if somebody kept coming down your street, beating you up and doing things, planting stuff on you, dropping crack and stuff into your community, tearing up your community, and then all of a sudden, the problem is people have been isolated from that. And so even though it's a ignorance, and I think in some way that's inexcusable, it's still not the motive that people are trying to ascribe to it. And so the misunderstanding is, I'm not sitting down to listen and to what you're saying, and you're not sitting down to try to hear what I'm actually saying. And I've had to check some of my evangelical Christian white brothers on the fact that it's like, y'all don't even want to listen to what these people are saying. You have what you formed in your mind about what they're already going to say and what somebody's already told you about them, but you have no intention of sitting down and saying, okay, tell me why you think this way.
Yeah.
How can I better understand what exactly it is that you're saying?
Well, and then another problem too is that so many words are inflammatory.
Yeah.
Like, people don't like the word racist. They don't want to be called racist. You know, even I just got done listening to a podcast recently, and I forget who it was, but she went. It was a Sam Harris podcast, but it was what was the name of her document? I wish I could give her some type of shout out, but she basically went to white nationalists, you know, racists, and like tried to have conversations with them, and some of them were really successful. She changed some of their minds because she was herself a Muslim. And they didn't even, a lot of them didn't even call themselves racist. She would say, well, you know, isn't this racist? Well, I'm not a racist. I'm a truthist. So they would spin it. So even people who openly don't have the best interests of Black people in mind don't want to be called racist, right? And so, but I think, again, that goes to the whole, like, so for instance, someone could call me a racist, and my response is going to be like, okay, maybe on some level I am, because I don't know why it's doing that, but I'm not scared of the word. I'm not, you know, it's just like, to me, I'm worried about your truth claim. Why do you think that? What can I do to change myself, you know? And so I just fear part of that's going on. I understand why it's going on. And to me, that is something liberals could be doing, is you know they're going to take it like that. You know, some people are going to take it like that. So scale it back, or at least, because you're not saying they're racist. You're shouting at them that they're racist. And that's obviously not going to get their attention. To me, the other side of the coin is, don't get upset because someone's calling you a name that you don't like if they think it's true, right? Isn't that the whole thing?
Yeah, if I don't, to me, I've always thought this way too. I guess even from the Black perspective, I'm like, I've been called a nigger before with some hillbilly driving down the street. I'm going into Wendy's and go back to Africa, and to me, I mean, it was kind of funny because it was Chappelle era. This is what I'm saying. I'm channeling Black white supremacists at the time. Yeah. And it was like, okay, I can't believe that just happened. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like, like it was something I'm like, that happened. Wow. Yeah. But to me, it's one of those things I'm like, I can't control what somebody else says to me, but I can control who I am and my response to it. Right. And I think my my disposition, I think what people don't understand sometimes about me, even in my own family, is that I've made a determination, like, you don't have to like me, I like me. You know what I'm saying? And if I'm waiting for somebody else to like me and like what I'm doing, I could be waiting forever. Like, I could be. It's possible. Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be people that are that enjoy my presence, that like me, but the first person that I've got to convince that I'm worthwhile is me. See what I'm saying? And I think that's the mindset that I come at every single question, because I could wait on somebody else to extend a hand to me. Yeah. Or I could be the one extending a hand, and if they don't want it, then I move on to the next person or the next idea. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so my perspective is, on any side, if you don't have the fortitude to have somebody disagree with you and it not be so detrimental to who you are, or even say something to you that is wrong, there's something that is, I'm not saying that what they're doing is okay. I'm not saying that. Yeah. What I'm saying is, you can't wait for it to be okay, because they may never change. Yeah. And so the only thing you can control is you. The only thing that you can say is, I enjoy me. Right. And it's much more at the basic level. It's much more of a decision than it is an emotion or a feeling. That'll catch up. See what I'm saying? It's like, but I have to make the decision that I'm worthwhile, and that I like me. So if you think I'm a nigger, you think I'm this, you think I'm that, that's fine. You're ignorant, and you're gonna be ignorant. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry that you are ignorant. I'm sorry that you're an idiot in this respect. But I gotta keep pushing anyway. You know what I'm saying? You didn't make me, and I was okay before I met you. And I think it's so surprising how much we allow other people's opinions to affect who we are internally.
Yeah. I mean, the other side of that to me, though, is that it makes sense that it does, and sometimes shouldn't it? So if somebody's saying something just to hurt you, that's not of much value to you. Yeah. But if they're calling you something, or they're even trying to show you a flaw in yourself, and you're still in the mental attitude, well, it doesn't matter what you think of me. Well, then you're going to miss an opportunity to really change yourself for the better, in my opinion, as well.
Well, that comes from a different tone, though. Yeah. And I think you can sense that.
Or
you can
whatever.
Sense someone who's trying to help you and says something that's a critique to your. You can tell that.
But you can also do both, and it can be hard to tell. I can be critiquing you in a way that sounds like I'm yelling at you and being mean to you, and it would really it would show high critical thinking skills on my part to be able to tell the difference. Yeah. To say, even though you're yelling at me and calling me names, you still made X, Y, an argument, and those are still right, and I'm going to apply them.
No, I agree with it. I think that's another facet of what I think is everything I take to use for. Well, I mean, in my case, it's to be a better believer, a better Christian, a better man. You see what I'm saying? So, even if it's the opportunity to forgive someone who's wronged me, it's still an opportunity, and that's the way I view it. It's how do I respond to it, and how do I take the opportunity that's put in front of me to make me better at what I'm supposed to do. Right. Because you never get strong by not being in the gym. Right. And so sometimes the ignorant person that is saying something incorrectly, or that is causing you to act outside of your character, or the character that you desire to show to the world, right? It's an opportunity for you to do that. Whenever you're caught and you're wrong about something, the opportunity there is to be, I was wrong about it. Right. And understand that. And so I view it from the perspective that no matter what somebody is doing to me, I cannot always control that. Yeah. I cannot. And I can't worry about trying to control that. I can only worry about making sure that I'm prepared to handle it and use it for my benefit to go further and be better at what I'm supposed to do. That's the only thing that really I have control over. Right. And I think that's sometimes where people, like I said before, even from my own family, mistake my view even on racism and all those different types of things is coming from that basis of, hey, I can't control what he thinks about me. I can't control what she thinks about me. I can't control what upbringing they had. I can't control that. All I can control is how I respond to it. But I also understand that there are other people that don't think that way, that don't see that way, and that it may affect them in a different way. And I can't be necessarily just flippant to, like we talked about my mom. You know what I'm saying? She grew up in a different era.
Yeah.
Certain words and certain things mean something totally different to her than it means to me. I didn't have those experiences. And so when she says something, I just listen.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you what it's like to have niggers spray painted on your bus when you're trying to play a volleyball game.
Right.
Or going somewhere and being called that, and going into schools where you don't know if, you know, stuff could go down and you're automatically guilty for it.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Like, so I try to respect that also, and I think that's a part of being a mature adult.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. So, I think I want to finish on something here. So it's going to get just possibly conflictual. We'll see. I have a passage that I wrote, and you can just kind of tell me what you think, and then we can kind of intermix. To me, I want to intermix the whole Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thing, and then potentially the Trump thing, because that, especially with the wall, maybe we should save that for another time. But those seem particularly problematic to me. I don't know if you've been staying up to date on any of his environmental policies or things going on with that.
No.
Okay, so and then those are the things that get to me. Those are the real issues for me. So maybe we'll save that for a different one. But so I'm going to read this, and then again you can respond with what kind of your rebuttal is, and then maybe mix in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because to me we are going to go to, I guess the whole idea is this dichotomy between capitalism and socialism.
Right.
And it's just like, to me, it makes sense that people would have healthcare. To me, it makes sense that people would have education, and that it would be guaranteed to as many people as possible. To me, it makes sense that they would have a social safety net. So if they lose their job or they try a new business venture, that's what you want, right? Yeah. And to me, it doesn't help if you have a lot of people, because I think we have talked about this, but just the idea that like power is money. Right, it's the ability to enact certain ideas, and so what we have is a few people who can try out all the ideas that they want, and a large amount of people who can't, essentially. So we're not getting, to me, the innovation that we could, because we have this perception that, well, they own what they got. And so so that was that point, and then this one right here is what I wrote down, I think, a while back. Let's see. So Republicans is white people. Okay, so yeah, this is going to get inflammatory. So, yeah, I know you don't. So Republicans is white people ruining things again. Most minorities are Democrats, and while you can always find people who are the fringe, it is reasonable to assume the intelligence of your people as a whole and disavow their claims to being brainwashed, and or mental manipulation, as this degrades their intelligence. A vestige, okay, so I remember why I'm writing this now, though still useful, of claims made during imperialism. So the idea that black people are inferior, they don't know what's best for them. So I guess my question to you is, or what do you think about that? Do you not trust black people as a whole to seek what's right for them? So you know that most of them vote Democrat, right? And we've talked about that before. And I've heard you put this in terms of like, there seems to be some type of trickery. It seemed like you were saying to me last time on that part, but isn't
trickery
of the Democratic Party?
Yeah.
Isn't that also to say that black people are easily tricked? Like that the Democratic Party can just trick them into?
I think anybody can be tricked,
for sure.
But I also think,
but on such a mass scale though.
Like
they don't know
from, let's put it in my perspective. Coming from a family who don't know anything about the issues. Okay. They don't know anything about the issues. They just know what somebody says about.
Well, they know their issues though, don't they?
No, they don't even know what the person's idea about the issue is. From my perspective, from my family, I'm not talking about overall or.
No, I mean, but they know the things that affect them, right? They know the things that they need.
I think they have. Yeah, everybody knows what they need.
Right, but that's my point. Is that it makes sense that they would want better social programs,
right?
And vote.
I actually kind of flipped that on its head. This is why I think that it's more beneficial for blacks to be more conservative.
Okay.
Because I don't think every single chance I think we've had for the government, the American government, to do right by black people, they have not.
Okay.
Okay, that's an overstatement.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to retract. I'm going to backpedal. Not every time.
Okay.
Okay, but I think, or it has been subpar to what we've actually needed and wanted to happen.
Okay.
Or what was promised to us to happen.
Right.
And so my question is, why would we want more of it? And why would we want to yield more power to it? Now, I also understand, especially when I listen to, brothers that I kind of respect from the other side of the aisle thinking, like Roland Martin, people who are very knowledgeable, Claude Anderson, Boyce Watkins, I think that's how you say his name, but people that I respect on the other side of thinking, I can understand why it's like, okay, well, to right the wrongs, we need social policies in order to do it. But I'm like, why do we expect them to do right by us? And so we're in this catch-22 here, where it's like, okay, do we trust a government to first allow black people in to make sweeping policies that would correct the historical injustice that happened to us as a people, right? Do we rely or wait on that? It's kind of going back to my own psyche.
Right.
Do I wait on them to do something for me, or do I take what I have and I try to make the best for it? And every single other brother that I have, like I said, with my business, trying to get young brothers who need jobs, who need career planning, and bring them in ourselves. My personal belief is that that my own personal business can do more quicker to that effect than I could wait on policies to be pushed through that somehow out of the sky people are going to just be like, you know what, we have done those niggas wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like we need to do right by them. And we're not going. There's not going to be any type of hidden tricks behind what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? We're not just trying to get their votes and telling them what they want to hear.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Less of the government. I don't want you to do anything. Let us do for ourselves because we're capable to do for ourselves.
Okay, so that kind of respond in a few ways to that. One is what are they? Damn, I should just write stuff down. Basically, it's the idea. One is that the problem. So white people can't do it on themselves. I guess that's where I would start. It's not like white people are doing it on their own either. They are also getting.
What are we talking about? What?
In terms of gaining capital, in terms of gaining political influence, in terms of gaining social betterment, better education. They can pretend like they are, or we can pretend like we are, but they're not. They are also using the government to assist them because this is their government, right? Okay. It belongs to them. So the idea, you can't do it if you're on. It's how am I trying to describe this? It's like if the family is the smallest unit and the government's the biggest. The government is over the family, so you can't. The government is going to, no matter how you want to spin it, affect what happens here. So wouldn't it make? I guess my point was, wouldn't it make sense to do both? To both kind of encourage people on an individual level and say we also need a government. And that was the other thing I was going to say is, hasn't the government changed? So you can say the government has done us wrong, but now is the most that black people, minorities, women have been represented in government. So it's not just the white government anymore. It is people who are from those groups. And I also wanted to point out, I don't know if you've seen that, but or what you would think of it, but there's a picture of Congress, right? So the difference between the Republican Congress and the Democrat Congress, have you seen that? Where like the Republican Congress are all white and the Democrat Congress, they have, white, Hispanic, black, women. Like it's ridiculous. Like it's all white.
I think that's one of the things I always try to I agree with the ideals of conservatism.
Right. And how could you not? How could you not
agree with Republicans?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, And one of the biggest arguments and biggest frustrations is that Republicans don't pitch ideas. It's as if black people they don't even talk to black people. They don't even try to talk to black people because we already chalked it up that they're going to vote for Democrat. There's no point in even going over there and saying everything. And then on the other side, like for instance, when Trump just signed the bill for urban revitalization and bringing in businesses and no capital gains tax for 10 years in urban areas and things like that. Well, Roland Martin is sitting there and he's saying, well, we didn't even know about it. We didn't even know you were signing that bill.
Yeah.
And then the Republican side is saying nobody even reports on the stuff we try to do good. And so it's one of those things that's like, I think there's been such a breach in that it's not even encouraged. And I think even young black conservatives like me are discouraged from even talking about conservative ideas. It's not necessarily that I disagree with the assessment of the problem all the time. I most of the time don't disagree with the assessment of the problem. We usually don't get past that point.
Yeah.
When I'm talking, especially to my own people, we don't get past that point of, yeah, I disagree with that, but not because I disagree with that a problem exists. It's my assessment of how we deal with the problem and what we are to expect from a government who's historically pulled the wool over our eyes for centuries. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so there's a certain expectation that I think could be we could find common ground on. But like I said, like the whole trend of this whole conversation has been that most of the time it's dissolved into this like tribal, basic, shallow conversation of you think this person's racist, I don't think this person's racist. You're
right.
Got this motive and I've got this motive and this and that. And it's more of a place where I'm like, okay, I understand that there is a problem here.
But you also know that I mean, and I haven't done any polls, obviously, and maybe we should look at polls sometimes. But I mean, there also does seem to be a deficit in conservative knowledge about what black people actually go through. Okay, all right, yeah.
I agree 100%.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So, well, I think that was a good conversation, and there's always more to talk about, but that's never going to end. So. Hopefully you gain from something from this, and Chris, thank you, and I think you made some really good points.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I think hopefully now people can better, I think, understand the mindset of a black conservative, especially someone who is seeing a climate that it seems like you don't want to even participate in with most people who are on the other side because of the reactions. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. All right, I think that's great then. Thank you for being on the show.
No problem. Thanks for having me.